All right, so you want to take a deep dive into Ripple, XRP as some call it.
Yeah, it's certainly been making a lot of noise lately.
And you've got a ton of research here. It looks like you've been going through articles, analogies, even some legal stuff about that SEC case.
Oh yeah, I've been trying to get a handle on it all. It's a lot to process.
It's not just another Bitcoin or Ethereum, it's kind of its own beast.
Right, it's a payment protocol and a cryptocurrency. That's pretty unique.
So let's try to cut through the noise today, figure out why everyone's so excited or freaked out about Ripple.
Sounds good to me. Let's unpack it all.
One of the first things that jumped out at me from all this was just how fast Ripple is.
Oh yeah, the speed is insane. Like way faster than Bitcoin.
Like thousands of transactions per second, right?
Yeah, something like 1,500 per second compared to Bitcoin's, what, 6 or 7?
It's a huge difference.
And it kind of gets to the core of what Ripple's trying to do. Bitcoin, with that whole blockchain thing, it's great for, storing value, but it's not built for the kind of speed you need for like real-time payments in the global market.
So Ripple's more about transactions.
Yeah, speed and volume. Imagine instant international payments.
So no more waiting days for money to transfer.
Exactly. It could be revolutionary for like small businesses or families sending money overseas.
Okay, so that's exciting, but how does it actually work? It's not blockchain, right?
Right. It's decentralized, but it doesn't use blockchain like Bitcoin.
So how does it verify transactions?
They use something called a consensus ledger instead of a bunch of miners. It's a network of pre-selected validators that confirm transactions.
So more like a council making decisions.
Exactly. It's faster that way, but some people argue it's not as decentralized as Bitcoin.
Yeah, I could see how that could be a concern. Control versus efficiency.
And then there's the whole mining thing. Ripple doesn't have mining at all.
Which I guess is good for the environment, right?
Definitely way more energy efficient. But again, some people worry about that. They say it gives Ripple, the company, too much power over the system.
It's always a trade-off. So we've got speed, we've got this different approach to decentralization. Anything else that makes Ripple unique?
Well, the fixed supply of XRP is pretty interesting. They created 100 billion XRP at the start, and that's it. No more will ever be made.
So unlike Bitcoin, where they're constantly mining new coins.
Right. It makes XRP more like a finite resource, which could have implications for its value over time.
Okay, so a lot to think about there. But we can't ignore the big elephant in the room, the SEC lawsuit.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a big one.
It seems like that whole thing is hanging over Ripple's future.
It definitely could. The SEC's arguing XRP is a security, like a stock, and that Ripple should have registered it with them.
But Ripple says it's a currency.
Right. They say it's meant for real-world transactions, not investment. And, the outcome of this case could be huge for XRP.
It could really determine its future.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even with this lawsuit going on, you've got Grayscale trying to create an XRP ETF.
It seems kind of bold given how the SEC has been hesitant about crypto ETFs in the past.
It is. An ETF would make it so much easier for people to invest in XRP.
Because they could just buy it through their regular brokerage account.
Yeah, just like buying a stock.
But the fact that the SEC even acknowledged Grayscale's filing is interesting, isn't it?
It is. Doesn't mean they'll approve it, but at least they're willing to consider it.
So even with all this legal uncertainty, some people see a lot of potential in XRP.
Oh, absolutely. But, SRP isn't just about the lawsuit or a potential ETF. It's part of this whole altcoin world, and it's affected by all sorts of market forces.
Right, so even if Ripple's tech is great, it's still riding that crypto roller coaster.
Exactly. And things like, Dogecoin, Solana, even those Bitcoin ETF outflows we saw recently, they can all have an impact.
Okay, so we've got the macro picture, but what are those specific market forces that are really driving XRP's price?
Well, let's start by looking at, well, just the overall estimate toward altcoins. When Bitcoin's doing well, altcoins, they tend to, kind of ride that wave.
Like a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, exactly. But the opposite is true, too. When Bitcoin dips, altcoins can really take a hit.
So even though Ripple's doing its own thing, it's still tied to Bitcoin's fate to some extent.
To a degree, yeah. It's like, you can steer your ship, but you can't control the ocean currents.
And those currents right now are being influenced by, what, regulation, the overall economy, even just how people are feeling about crypto in general.
Right, exactly. It's a lot to keep track of.
Okay, so that's the big picture stuff. But what about those specific connections to other altcoins, like Dogecoin and Solana that we talked about before? What's going on there?
Well, it's interesting. It's like there are these mini trends within the altcoin market where certain coins kind of move together.
So maybe investors are seeing them as, I don't know, playing similar roles or betting on the same trends, even if the tech behind them is different.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Like take Dogecoin, for example.
The meme coin.
Yeah, but it's actually gained some traction as a payment system, especially for those smaller transactions. And then there's Solana, super fast, scalable people see it as a contender in the payment space too.
So even though Ripple's aiming for those big institutional payments, it's still caught up in this whole narrative about the future of crypto payments.
Exactly. And it shows how, interconnected everything is in the crypto world. And then, we have to factor in those Bitcoin ETF outflows we were talking about.
Oh, right, where people were pulling their money out of Bitcoin ETFs. You were saying that could mean they're looking for other opportunities.
Yeah, it could be a sign that some investors are getting a little less bullish on Bitcoin and maybe looking to diversify into altcoins that, have strong fundamentals and the potential for growth.
And XRP could fit that bill.
Potentially, yeah. Especially with its real-world use cases and the possibility of, getting some clarity on the regulatory front.
Okay, so it's like this giant puzzle, and we're trying to put all the pieces together. We've got Ripple, this super fast payment system aiming to change the way money moves around the world. But it's got this lawsuit hanging over it, and it's part of this crazy altcoin market that's constantly shifting.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, but understanding these factors is essential if you want to make sense of Ripple and where it fits in.
Okay, so let's cut to the chase. Can Ripple actually pull this off? Can it really revolutionize global payments like it says it will?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to say for sure. We have seen them get some traction with, some big financial institutions.
But it's early days still.
Yeah, for sure.
So if Ripple wants to reach its goals, what are the biggest obstacles?
Well, as we've talked about, that regulatory uncertainty is huge. That SEC lawsuit is a big deal. And until there's more clarity there, some institutions are going to be hesitant.
It's like they need a solid foundation to build on.
Exactly. And then there's, competition. Ripple's not the only one trying to get a piece of the global payments pie.
Right, there's Swift, the banks are upgrading their own systems, other crypto projects like Stellar.
It's crowded out there.
So they really have to prove that they're not just a little bit better, but like way better.
Yeah, a game changer, not just an augmentum improvement, because they need to convince these institutions that it's worth switching over. And then there's adoption, getting people to actually use it. It's a chicken and egg situation, right?
Right, banks won't use it until lots of people are using it, but people won't use it until the banks are on board.
Yeah, that's the challenge. They need to hit that tipping point where everyone starts using it because everyone else is using it.
So regulatory clarity, competition, and adoption, those are some big hurdles. But what about the volatility? Crypto's known for its wild price swings. That can't be good when you're talking about moving billions of dollars.
You're right. Businesses need stability. That's why, stable coins pegged to fiat currencies are becoming so interesting. They could help smooth things out.
Volatility is an issue, but maybe not a deal breaker. Sounds like Ripple's success is far from guaranteed.
No, it's not. I mean, the potential is huge, but there are definitely some challenges they need to overcome. But even if they don't, become the dominant force in global payments, their technology could still have a big impact. Even small improvements in speed and cost can make a big difference.
So it's not necessarily about being the only winner. It's about pushing the whole system forward.
Exactly. They're forcing everyone to innovate and adapt.
Okay, so before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, you mentioned there's something else we should know about, something kind of surprising.
Oh, yeah. Remember the creators of Ripple, the ones who came up with this whole system?
Yeah, the folks behind XRP. What about them?
Well, it turns out they still hold almost 20% of all the XRP out there.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is, and it's kind of complicated. It is, and it's kind of complicated.
How so?
Well, on the one hand, it means they're really invested in XRP's success. They have a big incentive to see it do well.
Yeah, makes sense.
But on the other hand, well, it raises some questions about control,
Like, do they have too much influence?
Yeah, potentially. It's kind of like when a small group of people hold a lot of stock in a company. They have a lot of power.
Right,
Now, there's no proof that they're doing anything shady or anything.
right.
But it is something to keep in mind. It means Ripple's not as, distributed as some other cryptos.
Okay, so it's another layer of complexity.
Exactly. It's not just about the tech. It's about who's involved, the market, the legal stuff, even who owns what.
Right. To really understand Ripple, you got to see the whole picture.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so big picture time. We've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about Ripple speed, how it's different from Bitcoin, that SEC lawsuit, the ETF possibility, the whole altcoin market, and now this ownership thing. What are the big takeaways you want our listener to walk away with?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to remember that Ripple is more than just a cryptocurrency. It's a payment protocol designed to be fast, efficient, specifically for moving money across borders.
Right, it's about the tech behind XRP.
Exactly. And while it's a crypto, it's got some fundamental differences compared to, say, Bitcoin, like no blockchain, no mining.
Right, those differences give it its advantages, but also open it up to criticism.
Exactly. And it's at a really interesting point in its development. That SEC lawsuit could have huge implications. It could really help or hurt it in the long run.
And then there's that potential ETF that could bring in a lot of new investors.
Yeah, a lot of eyes are on Ripple right now.
So for someone who's just starting to learn about all this, what advice would you give them?
I'd say do your research, stay informed, and be aware of the risks. Crypto is a volatile space, Ripple included.
Definitely not for the risk averse.
But for those who are willing to put in the time and understand what's going on, it's fascinating. It really gives you a glimpse into how the future of the finance might work.
A future where money moves a lot differently than it does today.
Exactly. And this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore.
Yeah, and who knows what the future holds? Will Ripple take over, or will it just fade away?
Only time will tell.
But it's definitely a story worth following. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Ripple.